Let's join Heather Volchko and Manny Huesias as they discuss high leverage practice number 20, how to provide intensive instruction.
Welcome to A Little TLC, the podcast where we explore the dynamic world of education. Join our host, Heather Volchko, as this season we focus on high leverage practices, known as HLPs. Each episode will examine a different HLP, an essential strategy designed to enhance teaching and improve outcomes across various educational settings. These practices focus on collaboration, assessment, social, emotional, behavioral support, and instruction, benefiting all K-12 students. I hope you're ready to be both challenged and inspired because this season is all about mastering the HLPs. This is A Little TLC.
Teachers match the intensity of instruction to the intensity of the student's learning and behavioral challenges. Intensive instruction involves working with students with similar needs on a small number of high priority, clearly defined skills or concepts critical to academic success. Teachers group students based on common learning needs, clearly defined learning goals, and use systematic, explicit, and well-paced instruction. They frequently monitor students' progress and adjust their instruction accordingly. Within intensive instruction, students have many opportunities to respond and receive immediate corrective feedback with teachers and peers to practice what they are learning.
For this HLP, we are talking about providing intensive instruction. Now, this is a massive topic with lots of moving pieces to actually do this. So, that is not what this part of the conversation is. Today, I've got Manny with me. He does a lot of work in self contained spaces, if it's therapeutic or just self contained within your publics or even alternative placements. There's all kinds of different, more intensive style programming that Manny has done some support with. So, I'm excited to hear his perspective on how this shows up in those spaces and places that he's been able to leverage his support. So, Manny, for you, when you're looking at intensive instruction, what is that for you?
Whenever I've read this HLP or have had to reference this HLP, what comes to mind for me is the tailored support. It's giving
Mhm.
kids, intensive instruction, being zeroing in on a kid who's struggling with math, or a group of kids who are struggling with the same form of math. It's zooming in rather than giving that one size fits all approach to everyone,
Mhm.
especially working in classrooms with special needs students who are there for a reason, they have behavioral problems or they have learning difficulties or whatever. I think part of the issue is staff sees students and their collective students, and
Mhm.
we forget that these kids are in some of these programs for different reasons. One can't read very well, one can't process numbers in their head, but because they are collectively thought of as students, we forget those things. And all right, well, you should be able to do this, or you're in fifth grade now, you should be able to do that, or whatever that case may be. So I've always seen this HLP, the providing intensive instruction, as giving extra zoomed in help to students who are struggling with their schoolwork, with their emotional outbursts, with their behavioral challenges, etc. It's not more of the same. It's specified and targeted to what each individual student needs.
Yeah, that's exactly when you were talking about that. The word that kept coming into mind was just individualized. That we have to see exactly where they're at, what they're needing, and then the aspect of instruction that makes it intensive is that we are diving into those things. And that's more than just running some baseline tests and seeing like where they're at and then grouping them in, to small groups, although yes, that's a part of it. It's truly looking at that student as an individual and looking, I mean, even like what you were saying with academic, the social, the behavioral, like there's all these different facets. Where are they at? And then upping that intensity, which in order to be more intensive in our instruction, we have to individualize it because we're actually meeting that specific need. So it truly is both and. I know it's not maybe explicitly called out in this high leverage practice that it's individualized, but it is somewhat assumed that we can't be more intensive if we're not simultaneously then also being more individualized about it.
With those customizations that we do, again, I'm not having been a gen ed student myself, right?
Yeah.
There was no customization. The most you got was, hey, my dog died. Can I turn this in a day late?
Mhm.
Yeah, sure, whatever. I've worked with students who struggle with their math.
Mhm.
And the whole group is doing it one way, but the student's really struggling. Okay, cool. Yeah, you're in sixth grade. You might feel a bit weird here for a second, but let's draw some telemarks.
Mhm.
Let's use some counters. Let's use whatever we have available to make this easy for you. Understanding that your classmates may know it a different way, but let's learn it a different way because we all learn things differently and it's not something to be ashamed of. And I feel like when students are treated as a whole, the individual parts of them can feel like a thing to be ashamed of.
Mm.
And I don't think teachers see that as often because especially kids nowadays bottle that stuff up and move on with life.
Well, so let's talk about like what is this, right? We're kind of dancing around it a little bit. So let's get specific. Intensive instruction. What is it? We've seen the kid, we're individualizing it, we're trying to meet their needs. Like, what are some of those specific strategies, moves? Like, what is intensive instruction or what makes it intensive?
I've seen it as everything from like we talked a little about small groups. You mentioned small groups
Mhm.
earlier. You got a bunch of kids struggling with this one thing, bring them all here, away from the lesson. Let's all work on this together. You got one kid in particular, if you got an eight in the classroom, or if I'm in the classroom and kid is struggling, yeah, I'll gladly take them and like help them catch up. But like I've seen that done even as the like teacher
Mm.
walks around the desk and just like, hey, how are you doing? You okay? Like during independent work, or like, can everyone understand this? If not, here's some alternative ways that like we can. It's not super zoomed in on a particular student, but it's just providing those alternative ways, customizable ways that allows a student to teach them.
Yeah. I mean, a couple of weeks ago, I think maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago, Alexander and I were having a conversation around explicit instruction. And that is kind of the I don't know, all the mechanical elements of situating ourselves to be able to provide a more intensive instruction to our students. Explicit instruction is one form that is, highly researched, very well backed, tons of, support showing that it really does work. And in that conversation with him, we can go, you can go back and listen to it. But that one was, he was basically saying that there's a kind of a divided camp. Some people are all for it and see the learning progress that comes out of it, and I kinda spoke to that as a special educator because it was always my goal to close those learning gaps. And he was speaking at it from the general education teacher, and it kinda cramps his instructional style, and so some of his profs in academia weren't necessarily fans of it. It's just you gotta know it, but, like, don't really rely on it or use it a lot, like, that's not really for you. And so I think within intensive instruction, there is things like explicit teaching, like there are serious ways to kinda dive in and make it happen, but it's that level of intensity that is kind of what you're talking about. So if it's not working for everybody, now we're gonna pull that small group. And then if that's not working, then we're gonna layer in some more supports or we're gonna try it in a different way. Like you had said, instead of, just running the way the whole group is running, I'm gonna try counters or tallies. Like there are these other pieces. But regardless of what strategy, I mean, it's the outcome we're shooting for. Like, are
Mhm.
they learning? And if they haven't been learning, well, then we need to up our game. And that provides that intensity because really the goal is just we're probably doing more for them than we're doing for other people. And they're learning from it. If we're just doing a bunch of stuff and they're not learning, well, then we're not really providing intensive instruction. Like, what are they actually getting out of this?
I've even like going to the closing the learning gaps aspect of it. Like I had one student struggling with math because they were behind on some of their learning compared to their peers.
Hmm.
Worked with the kiddo, and, like, as soon as I got him started, like, I'd come back and, like, "Hey, are we working on math?" Like, "Remember what we did the other day?" To the point where the kiddo was eventually doing it by themselves because that's how they got to the point where they were joining the other, students
Yeah.
in the whole group because they had found a method that worked for them, and I could no longer I mean, I could, but I no longer had to do the, like, one-on-one intensive, like, "Alright, let's do this," and, like, so it closes that gap, it supports the diversity in learners that we have, it prevents bigger problems from arising because like, that kid
Hmm.
could have gotten frustrated, could have said, "Screw this," flipped a desk, and walked out,
Yep.
and, like, it promotes the fairness in the sense that it, like, gives everyone a chance to succeed.
Yeah.
Like, doesn't matter where they're starting from.
Right. And that's where you're talking about that intensity being more individualized means they can get better feedback. They can get faster feedback. They can get more tailored feedback. And then they can actually adjust their learning and see what they're getting and what they're not getting in a faster rate. And then that's what then allows them to not need as much support, which is what you're talking about too.
Yeah, I'm not saying it needs to be like one-on-one intensive, whatever, but like again, going back, walk around the desk for a little bit, check in on them. If you know a different way to do it, and you don't want to call them out in front of everyone. Hey, have you tried doing it this way? Or like, do you need
Mhm.
extra support? It's like let the student advocate for themselves,
Yep.
but just keep giving those regular progress checks.
Yeah. So then, as you're thinking about intensive instruction and all these different spaces that you have been in, are there any non examples? Like it might have been in an intensive space, like in a self contained room or in a therapeutic or alternative setting, but it maybe wasn't exactly intensive instruction, something that maybe someone thought was intensive just because of the program that they were in, but the practice actually would not count as intensive instruction.
I've seen one-on-ones and whole groups where they think where the instructor, whoever they may be, is like thinking they're providing that individualized support, but in reality, they're just hammering home the like, here's how everyone
Mhm.
else is doing it. Here,
Just reteaching.
it's just reteaching, going slower, like maybe giving them a little more time, yes, but like there is no individualization. There's no differentiation between what this student needs versus or these group of students needs versus what the whole class needs to help them succeed in the same thing. And like I wouldn't count just because you're in a one-on-one group or just because you're in a what like I wouldn't necessarily count that as the intensive interventions or instructions or anything. Like you're just doing things slower. Like
Yeah. Slower or with less people,
yeah,
that
slower,
that
less
doesn't make it
people,
more intensive.
or in a different setting. Like,
Mhm.
I'm sorry, just because the kiddo's out of the classroom and might be in the library does not mean that this is gonna click any better.
Yeah, it's like the instruction itself has not changed, it's just the location and the number of people around,
Yeah.
um, and that's I think that's really, like, good observation because a lot of times people think, the intensity is defined on the space. And it's not. I mean, I have that conversation around in special education, we use the terms least restrictive environments and then converse most restrictive environments. And so it's always that conversation of where does this kid fit? Where can their needs be met? But a lot of times there are these sort of assumptions that, well, it's in that classroom or it's with that staff. So therefore, it must be more intensive, and sometimes it's really not. People are just doing the same thing in a different place, or it's a different person doing the same thing, but it's actually not layering onto what was already available to that student. I will say if it's going from a whole group to a one-on-one and there is active interaction with that adult, well, then, yeah, they are gonna get a more intensive form of feedback because 'cause they'll be able to ask questions, get that immediate, nudge and response, like, all of those things. That would be more intensive than in a whole group setting, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the actual instruction is like, their learning goals or, what type of I'm just thinking of, like, how you actually do your lesson planning and how you walk them through that learning journey. That may not actually be any different. So I love that you're noting like, "Hey, it's not location or human dependent. It's actually what you're doing in that interaction."
Yeah, and this is where I'm thankful for specialists that work at the different schools, like the speech path, the
Mhm.
OT, PT, occupational therapy, physical therapy, whatever. Like, they may do one-on-one, they may do group stuff, but, like, I've seen them either dive deeper into what their teacher is going in class, like, especially with the younger kids learning to read and some students having, like, difficulties with speech, right? Like, or reading difficulties. They layer on and, again, the individualization, the customization, the differentiation. Let's dive a little deeper, let's make this so that it's tailored to you, so that by the time you get back to class, you can read Scott or Spot finds a tree or whatever, insert name of book here. And conversely, I've seen them do like, "Hey, teacher, we worked on this. Like, here's how we did it. Here's how like learn from each other on how to do this individualization and intensity stuff." And like, it's a group effort. It's not you're not gonna have all the responses or not the responses, all the answers. Your aid's not gonna have all the answers. The speech path's not gonna have all the answers. The principal's not gonna have all the answers. But like combined, like, what can we do to make this to meet the needs of this kid, this
Yeah.
group of students?
I think you're really speaking to in order for it to truly be intensive, there is an aspect of collaboration and teaming that will need to happen. And so, if that's relying on different specialists to identify some of those more individualized learning goals or, learning different strategies on how to kind of facilitate growth in some of these areas that students may be struggling in from different fields, different backgrounds. There is a collaborative aspect to that that then all collectively is what then results in that more intensive instruction, that more individualized, intensive learning, journey really for the student as they're walking through things.
I mean, send it home too with the parents, like, give them
Thank
progress
you.
reports, like, "How is this working?" Like, "Here's how we're doing it in class, here's how kiddo's been doing it, it's been working for them." Like, I know what the instructions on the homework say, but, like, here's how she, they did it in class, like,
Mhm.
try this with your kiddos so that they, like, either get more comfortable with it or, like, can transition into what everyone else is doing if that's the goal. But, like, include the parents, include the guardians, whoever they are, and, like, include them in that collaboration aspect because it doesn't just end in the building.
Yeah, because something that we haven't really talked about in this part of the episode is really when there's more intensive instruction, then there tends to be an intensive layer of data collection around that too. And that's exactly what you're talking about. Here's what we're doing and how we're doing it, but also here's how that's working. Like we're seeing change, there's learning going on. Like this is actually working. I mean, quite honestly, any family would be happy to hear when something is going well, especially if the kid is receiving. I say kid, but student. When the student is receiving intensive instruction, the family has probably received a whole lot of feedback about all the things that they weren't learning and they weren't doing and they weren't performing. So to be able to show, hey, this is what we're doing and how it's working, and it is working, there is that kind of data piece that goes with really showing if that intensity is having the results that we want it to.
Nothing better than hearing, my student was struggling with math and was refusing to do it, and thus they were ripping up the paper and flipping desk and walking out. But like, okay, we took the minute to address it. We took a minute to figure out what part of what we're doing is causing them to flare up like that, addressing it, working with them to figure out methods that work with them, work for them, that make this either easier or more understandable. And like, all right, mom and dad, here you go. Here's all the stuff that says, like, yes, we were doing this, now we're doing this. Now the kiddo's staying in the classroom. Now the student is participating now. But here's how we got them there. Let's keep it up at home and see if that shifts outside of the classroom environment.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing your expertise and all of the different angles that really combine together to make instruction intensive in the way that this high leverage practice is talking about.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Are you ready to choose a transformative learning journey that allows you to absorb, reflect, and apply new knowledge at your own pace? This week, it's Workshop Week. Join us for a collection of pre-recorded, immersive learning experiences designed to empower you with practical skills and moments of introspection. Our workshops are designed to be the perfect blend of structured learning and personal growth. Each session includes dedicated time for reflection and application, so you can truly internalize what you've learned. We want to invite you to head over to thresholdlearning.org, your one-stop destination for all things TLC. Here you'll find this episode's show notes and blog pairing, our entire catalog of ACE-accredited self-paced courses, an ever-expanding bookshelf of resources, and anything else we've talked about. See you there. Attention educators pursuing behavior analysis certifications, Supervision with TLC is designed for educators like you, offering remote supervision with school-based BCBAs that fits into your schedule instead of the other way around. Our supervised fieldwork approach allows you to earn your hours right in your classroom alongside your teaching responsibilities. Benefit from affordable rates, month-to-month scheduling, and comprehensive supervision, all 100% remote. Our school-based BCBAs are here to guide you every step of the way. So why switch jobs when you can stay in education and grow professionally? Explore more at thresholdlearning.org/supervision and see how we can help you succeed.
In a school-wide tiered system of support, the most intensive level of intervention, commonly known as Tier 3, is typically handled by special education teachers, while Tier 2 is delivered by highly trained general educators. Tier 3 focuses on highly individualized instruction, guided by a process known as data-based individualization, or DBI. DBI involves starting with a validated supplemental intervention and using both diagnostic and progress monitoring data to create tailored instruction. This approach allows teachers to continually adapt the intervention based on a student's ongoing performance, ensuring the support evolves as needed. Tier 2, on the other hand, is designed to help students who are below grade level but haven't responded well to differentiated core instruction. It uses research-based interventions to address skill gaps in small groups, usually with 4 to 7 students. The primary goal is to reinforce foundational skills that allow students to access grade-level content, ultimately preventing further academic struggles. Tier 3 ramps this up significantly, focusing on students with more severe and persistent learning needs who haven't made sufficient progress despite receiving Tier 1 and Tier 2 interventions. Teachers in Tier 3 use evidence-based practices proven effective across various content areas, including math, reading, writing, and behavior. The instruction is explicit, integrates cognitive strategies, offers continuous feedback, and is tightly aligned with student performance data. It's delivered to very small groups, usually no more than 3 students, with similar learning or behavioral challenges. A critical part of this intensive instruction is that it is both systematic and explicit. Teachers group students based on shared learning needs, define clear learning goals, and use carefully paced instruction to target specific skill gaps. Data is at the heart of this process, guiding the identification of these gaps and ensuring that instruction is focused on high-priority skills that are essential for academic success. Students in these settings benefit from multiple opportunities to respond, practice what they are learning, and receive immediate corrective feedback from teachers and peers. Highly trained specialists, such as reading experts, special educators, or behavioral specialists, typically deliver this level of instruction. They use both quantitative and qualitative adaptations to intensify support, whether it's increasing instructional time or reducing group size, or integrating strategies that help with cognitive processes like self-regulation, memory, and academic skills. For instance, when quantitative changes aren't enough, teachers might shift to qualitative adaptations like making instruction more explicit or incorporating cognitive supports, such as memory aids or self-regulation strategies to further aid learning. The DBI frameworks play a pivotal role here. It helps special educators monitor the effectiveness of supplementary interventions. If progress isn't sufficient, the first step is often to increase the instructional intensity by reducing group sizes or extending learning time. If that still doesn't yield the desired outcomes, educators turn to modifying the instructional delivery itself. This might involve using techniques like think-alouds or visual aids to model problem-solving strategies, or introducing mnemonics to help students retain key concepts. Through this flexible, data-driven approach, teachers can make continuous adjustments that meet the unique needs of each student, ensuring that even the most challenging learning barriers can be addressed with targeted, responsive interventions. When students with disabilities aren't making adequate progress through general education instruction, special education teachers or specialists often step in to intensify the support. A widely recognized approach for doing this is through the process of data-based individualization, or DBI, as promoted by the National Center for Intensive Intervention, or NCII. DBI provides a structured, research-based framework that helps educators make well-informed decisions to support both academic and behavioral improvements. It's a data-driven process that revolves around the use of evidence-based curricula in the specific areas where students are struggling, combined with ongoing progress monitoring and diagnostic testing. One of the key aspects of DBI is that it's not static. It encourages constant adjustment based on how well students are responding to interventions. Teachers may make adjustments in curriculum, group size, or even the structure of the instruction itself, all guided by student data. These decisions are often made collaboratively within a team setting, ensuring that multiple perspectives are considered in finding the most effective approach. What makes DBI particularly powerful is how it aligns so closely with several high-leverage practices, particularly HLPs 1 through 6, which cover key aspects of collaboration, assessment, and data use, as well as instructional HLPs 11, 12, 16, and 22, which focus on adapting instruction, providing feedback, and offering explicit teaching. This alignment underscores the importance of blending evidence-based practices with data-informed adjustments to help students with disabilities thrive. When teachers effectively promote active student engagement, particularly for students with significant learning challenges, they rely heavily on the DBI process. DBI provides a research-based framework that allows educators to tailor interventions to individual student needs, tracking progress closely and adjusting strategies as necessary. Teachers start by selecting a secondary prevention program grounded in research, one that's specifically designed for students who need more intensive intervention beyond what's offered in the general curriculum. Progress monitoring is essential throughout this process. Teachers continuously track how students are responding to instruction, using data to make informed adjustments. Diagnostic assessment plays a key role as well, helping teachers create highly individualized intervention plans based on a student's unique profile. This isn't a one-size-fits-all approach. It's about adapting and refining strategies until the right fit is found. Within the DBI process, there are clear steps that guide this individualized instruction. First, teachers establish where the student is currently performing academically. From there, they set ambitious yet achievable long-term goals based on established norms. High-quality instruction or interventions are then implemented with fidelity, and teachers monitor progress toward those goals. As progress is tracked, teachers use specific decision rules to assess how effective the instruction is and how well the student is progressing. At this point, if student progress isn't meeting expectations, teachers generate a hypothesis about what might be hindering progress and adjust the instruction accordingly. The beauty of this process is its flexibility. Teachers can continue to monitor, assess, and make instructional changes throughout the year based on data, ensuring that the support provided is dynamic and responsive to each student's evolving needs. This continuous cycle of evaluation and adaptation ensures that students receive the most effective, personalized support possible. School leaders play a crucial role in ensuring that teachers are equipped to meet the diverse needs of their students, particularly through effective use of evidence-based practices and the DBI process. It's essential that educators not only have a solid understanding of these practices, but are also skilled in using data to guide their decisions. This means providing teachers with consistent opportunities for professional development and coaching, particularly around DBI. By doing so, leaders can ensure that teachers are able to implement these processes with precision and confidence, adapting instruction based on students' data in real time. In addition to offering training, feedback is key. School leaders need to be actively engaged in observing how teachers are applying DBI across different settings, offering constructive input on whether educators are making the most accurate and efficient decisions. This helps to ensure that intensive interventions are having the intended impact. Moreover, accountability is a significant part of this process. It's not just about providing resources and training, but also holding teachers and other key stakeholders responsible for their roles within DBI. This includes ensuring that intensive instruction is delivered effectively, that data is being collected and monitored regularly, and that progress towards adjusting goals is being met. Leaders should also be ready to offer support or coaching whenever necessary, keeping the entire process moving smoothly and ensuring that students receive the best possible outcomes. While many students respond well to research-based interventions like those provided in Tier 2 instruction, there are some who don't make the expected progress, even with these targeted supports. These students require a more intensive instructional approach. This is where the framework of data-based individualization, or DBI, becomes critical. Grounded in over a decade of research, DBI has proven especially effective for students with disabilities who don't show adequate progress in general education, Tier 1, or with supplemental interventions, Tier 2. Intensive instruction under DBI isn't just about increasing the frequency or duration of lessons. It's about making strategic, data-driven adjustments to the intervention itself. The beauty of DBI is its flexibility. It responds to individual student data, ensuring that instruction adapts in real time to meet their specific needs. By focusing on these nuanced, individualized aspects, students who would otherwise continue to struggle can make meaningful gains in their learning. The process is about being deeply responsive, adjusting to the unique and evolving challenges students face in their educational journey. That's all for today. We're excited to have Marla Watts-Pacheco on the show next week to bring her insights on high leverage practice number 21, how to teach students to maintain and generalize new learning across time and settings. See you then.
Hey, before you jump back into your busy life, consider dropping a like and follow Threshold Learning TLC on Facebook and Instagram. And if you like our show, share the podcast with your colleagues. A personal recommendation is by far the best way to promote the podcast. Let them know that they can listen on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere else they catch their podcasts. Just be sure to leave a rating and review on your favorite platform. You can also email us at info@thresholdlearning.org. We always enjoy connecting with fellow educators and champions for educational justice. You can find everything you're looking for at thresholdlearning.org. See you there.